Hello everybody and welcome to this webinar which is brought to you by Building as part of Digital Building Week. My name is Carl Brown, I'm the Assistant Editor of Builder Magazine and I'm going to be chairing this session today which is on the topic of delivering transformation, and specifically we are going to be asking, is a lack of skills threatening our digital transformation? We all know this is a hugely important topic. Digital initiatives will obviously have a key part to play as we strive towards net zero and as the construction industry looks for new ways to increase productivity and reduce costs. But to what extent might this all be derailed by skill shortages, and what can we do about it? I'm pleased to say we have a fantastic panel with us today to talk about these issues. We have, if I just introduce them, we have Andrew Shepherd, who's the Managing Director at modular developer Top Hat. We have Marcus Bennett, who's the Head of Analysis and Forecasting at the CITB. We have Nathan Marsh, who's the Chief Digital Officer at Turner & Townsend. And we will shortly, hopefully, be joined by Carol Massey, who's the Head of Construction at the Access Group. Each of our panelists will talk for around 10 minutes or so, and that should leave us lots of time at the end for your questions. And please do join in and ask us some questions. All you need to do is pop a question into the chat box that you should be able to see on your screen, and I'll try and get to as many of them as I can at the end. But that's all from me for now. I'm now going to ask Andrew to kick us off with the first presentation. To you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carl, and thank you for inviting me along today. So with any luck, I should be able to share my screen shortly. Excellent. Hopefully that works. So thanks for the introduction, Carl. So I work for a company called Top Hat. What we do is we manufacture houses in a factory environment. We build them as much as we possibly can in that environment and then deliver them to site and erect them as quickly as possible. Part of why we do that is to deliver a much more sustainable home that's delivered to a much higher quality. But also it's about addressing a lot of the skill shortages that we see in the world today. So for me, the focus on this little part of my session will be actually looking at why do we need to address the digital transformation and why do we need to start doing something differently. So I'm going to start by looking at what people have been doing in the past and where they've gone in other industries. So this video that I'm showing now is a video from 1919, and this is the Ford factory in 1919. And this is how they used to build cars. And if we think about what the process is and what it was then and the design process and the information then and how it's transformed to 2019 in a similar factory in the same location for the same company, it's an entirely different process. It's an entirely different skill set. And we've had to really transform in the manufacturing world how we think to deliver. So it's entirely new processes, it's entirely new jobs, it's entirely new careers that have been created to enable that transformation in delivery. I then do my contrast and compare to a construction site from 1919. And I'm not being too cynical, but I suspect we could take any of these people from this construction site, give them some PPE and a hard hat, put them onto one of our sites today, give them the same drawings, and they'd still be able to build a house. There's not that much movement, whereas our approach to delivering houses is maybe somewhat slightly different to what they were doing in 1919. We are looking to deliver very large-scale modules and putting in 6 of those in a single day, so 3 houses a day. To create that transformation in jobs, to create that difference with an entirely different range of skill sets. I think if we look at a traditional house builder, the 1919 workforce could take drawings from 2020 and still be able to use them. If we look at the automotive world, I don't think they'd have drawings. So a very, very different change in that industry. We also have an issue within our industry that we're all aware of around productivity. So what we've done is we've looked at how productivity has changed between 1990 and 2019. And one of the key things there is that the daily wage in 1990 in construction was about £1 a day, and in 2019 it was about £110 a day. The average cost of a house between 1919 2019 increased from £600 to £235,000. And the cost to build a house went from about £400 to £135,000 a day. But the key thing here is the number of man days to build a house in 1919 was about 300, increasing to 900 in 2019. And if you were to ask most people what kind of house would they like to live in, quite often the answer you might get is an Edwardian house, a Victorian house, or a Georgian house. Very few people put their hands up and say, I would like to live in a modern built house as their absolute preference. So it's not even like we're delivering better quality. And that's something that we see from newspaper headlines, from reporting. Quality of what's being delivered today is not very, very good. It's not good enough. And it's something that we need to address. And again, it's a skills issue. It's a challenge where we're not, we haven't got the skills in the industry to be able to address those challenges. So the really big question is, why do we want to do something different? Well, it is trying to deliver a zero carbon home. We should not be creating carbon and delivering new homes now. It is possible to create new homes with zero embodied carbon that actually create no carbon when they're in operations. Our homes are manufactured on a site, and you are more often than not given what is developed by the developer. There's no personalization around that, and there's very little automation in terms of the building of that. So we think that actually helps in terms of addressing the skills gap and improving productivity. I touched on quality before, but we do need to improve quality, because actually improving quality will also help in terms of environmental performance. COVID-19 has changed the way we all think and the way we address things, and it demands that we have a rethink about what we do and how we do it as well. And I sort of don't say this too flippantly, but we want to build homes that we'd be happy for our children to live in. And I think that's really quite important, that you want to deliver something that you'd be proud for your own children to buy. So how do we make it happen, and what does that start to look like? Well, we need to start thinking differently about design. Design needs to become more digitized. We need to think about procurement. It is entirely possible to link procurement and the bill of materials to the design. And we do that through the use of BIM. We need to change the construction approach, and we need to adapt and use more technology in what we're doing. And all of that requires a mindset shift in terms of skills. So we need to work with universities, we need to work with school leaders, we need to work with training providers to address and create those new roles and the training that sits behind them. But most importantly to me, it takes courage. We all have to accept we need to do something differently, and that's often the most difficult step. If we accept we have to do something differently, then we will start to do things differently. If we all think we're satisfied and comfortable with what we've been doing for the last 30 years, with the muscle memory that we've all developed over that period, then nothing will change. So it requires the courage to make that change. And just finally from me, it doesn't compromise design. It doesn't compromise independence. It doesn't mean you have to have a one-size-fits-all approach. It enables, in fact, much more variety and much more difference and variability in design if you address it properly and deliver it properly. So I think I'm pretty much bang on 10 minutes there, and I'll hand back to you, Carl.
Thanks, Andrew, and that was a great start. Really, it was a great run through of the need to improve productivity and quality, and anchored in some historical context there, which is fantastic. Next up, let's go to Marcus Bennett, Head of Analysis and Forecasting at the CITB. So, Marcus.
Hello, thank you very much. I feel like I need to apologise straight away because I haven't prepared a presentation as fantastic as Andrew's. I've sort of responded to some of the questions that were posed of me, and I hope can put back some challenges that start a bit of a debate. I kind of hope people know that the Construction Industry Training Board is CITB and what we do, but our focus is primarily around 3 areas of activity for the construction industry, which are skills and training, putting in place standards and qualifications, and then thinking about careers. So how do we attract people into the industry, make sure they're well informed, inspired, that they have a good journey through a career. And I think there's some questions about the extent to which that covers modern methods and the areas that Andrew have been talking about at the moment. A bit of background from my point of view around skill shortage, and it's some of the context of why we're here. And these are critical issues for our country, our children, a point that Andrew made. We need more and better housing. We need to get much better at maintaining and developing our infrastructure. And the one that is really playing on my mind at the moment is around net zero, which we really should call a climate crisis. So as an industry, we've really got to think about how we stop knocking things down and reuse them instead. But we've also got to retrofit 27 million homes and 2 million other buildings. And that's a challenge that I think we're really struggling to come to grips with at the moment. A bit of context around that, the CITB's Construction Skills Network forecast that over the next 5 years, just to meet existing demand that we anticipate, we need an extra 217,000 people to enter the construction industry. And yet, to meet that net zero challenge that the government has set, so that how do we retrofit those 27 million houses and 2 million other buildings, we need the equivalent of increasing the output of the construction industry by 13% by 2028. That's the equivalent of an extra 350,000 people. And the situation at the moment is, I think lots of people that work in the industry would recognise that we've lost lots of skilled tradespeople. Vacancies are at an all-time high. So we really need to work out how we attract a lot more people into construction and give them the skills that they need. And CITB, lots of others, Andrew, Nathan, I hope everyone here is devoting effort to working out how we get more people into construction, we make it an attractive option. But we really need to change the way we do things. My view is, when we are struggling now to recruit people, when we've lost people, those targets of 217,000 people and 350,000 people right now, they look close to unachievable to me. And so there's some important points there. And again, I'm repeating a little bit of what Andrew said, but construction's got a really poor record on productivity. That's not UK construction. On global rankings, UK construction is pretty good, but in comparison with other sectors like energy and manufacturing, we know we've just not kept track. And I think over the past 20 or so years, energy and manufacturing have improved their productivity around about 20%, where construction has flatlined. And if we had kept up with them, all of those skills gaps that I talk about just wouldn't exist now. So there's a kind of a real imperative not just to do more of the same, but start to think about how we do different. And I kind of noted something recently that 5 years ago, Mark Farmer's report, Modernise or Die, caused quite a storm. And yet here we are again, 5 years later, still talking about the same things, with a sense that actually things have not moved forward that significantly. It was 3 years ago that CITB published its report, Unlocking Construction's Digital Future, which we started to identify some of the issues and start to make some progress. I think we've all, as an industry, been knocked pretty hard by the pandemic, but I do detect some real positive signs that everyone needs to get behind. And one of those in particular is that the pace seems to have been given a little bit more energy by the Construction Leadership Council, that's got a real interest in how we modernise around modern methods, about smart construction, about digitalisation, but also an emphasis on skills for modernisation. And so there are a couple of points there I sort of feel like I want to answer. That the question was, is a lack of skills threatening our digital transformation? And the answer is yes. You know, we just don't have the skills now, but it isn't necessarily always the technical skills required to operate a digitalized tool or process. I think what we've identified in our research and what I hear time and again is it's the attitudinal, behavioral, cultural skills that need to change to help us change the way we do things. It's about collaboration. And I made a note, Andrew used the word courage. The whole industry needs courage to do things a little bit differently, to take on things that it hasn't been comfortable with in the past, but do it in a careful, clever way so that we don't make mistakes, we get it right first time. I come from industries, technology and telecommunications, where no one was ever the first to buy a new product. That's a silly thing to do. Let's make sure we get things working before we offer them to other people. As part of that skills and what the steps we can take, well, CITB did some work trying to understand the bodies of knowledge required about the digital competency framework, and our intention is to put that in place. And that's important because it helps give clarity around terminology for digital skills. And what that does in turn is ensure that people have the information they need to develop consistent standardized training. It speeds and scales the adoption by aligning understanding between training providers and employers, and we don't have that at the moment. And it allows individuals to assess their own competence and identify where they need to improve. And there was another question that was put to me, which was, with the correct learning, how can increased digital transformation actually create more jobs? I kind of want to fight back at that, because we don't need to create more jobs. The problem is we can't fill the jobs we've got now. We need to help people be more productive, achieve better quality outcomes, work more effectively together. We need to transform jobs in such a way as to enable technology to help individuals in ways that complement their technical trade skills. We need technology to help with the things that are hard or unpleasant for people to do. We need technology to improve our processes. And the example I like to refer to, normally I wave a handheld device around, because most people want to talk about digital twins or drones or automated plant or AI. But the reality of the construction industry, less so modern methods, but the reality of the construction is every day there are millions and millions of individual transactions. People at the moment can't get a bag of cement. They're struggling with the price of timber. And what happens is we hand over a piece of work to the next person in the chain. And at every point in something that has so many transactions, there is the potential for inefficiency. Well, that's where the opportunity to improve is. If we can simplify those processes using digitalized technology by making sure people have got the right stuff at the right time, in the right place, and they're working effectively together, you can create the efficiency gains that take away a lot of frustrations and help fix the problems around quality and productivity that are what are critical for my children and your children and our grandchildren about fixing the climate crisis. I wasn't making a note of time. I probably said too much.
Thank you, Marcus. You're fine. Yeah, that was great. There was some mind-boggling numbers there, weren't there, on the scale of the net zero challenge and the range of skills that are needed. So thank you for that, Marcus. Next, let's welcome Carol Massey, who's the head of construction at the Access Group. Great you could join us, Carol. And over to you, if that's okay.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, so technical. I had a bit of a glitch myself this morning. So, and that's not true lack of skills. But yeah, it is an interesting topic, and it does, and it has been around for a while, as long as I've been in construction, working in from a business perspective, but also from a tech side. So in terms of the question, is there lack of skills threatening our digital transformation? Yes and no. It's, you know, we all have digital around us day in, day out. We get up in the morning, there's a digital phone that wakes us up, there's a TV that's digitally, so we're around digitally in some shape or form. When we try to look at construction, I think what is evident, still reverting back to the construction sector being the dinosaurs of technology in terms of adopting, and it's something that is still sticking around us. And you know, as I said, and you know, I've been in this sector for a long time, and we're trying to desperately, we've got to break away from that mold that we cannot move with the times as like other sectors do. I agree with what Marcus said, that there is, you know, this confidence that's lacking in enabling construction companies and businesses to move forward. However, we all know that there is a skill shortage of bringing new blood into the sector. But one of the things that I've been discussing around is about, you know, there's some really big name construction companies and businesses around, and I think it needs to start from within those organisations, because you've got some really good, dedicated, skilled people already within those organisations. It's about looking inward first, promoting from within to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to excel, not by bringing other people in and increasing your pay wage to get people in to do a job that somebody else within your teams could actually do. And then, you know, from a technology perspective, you know, it's that learning. You know, we know that construction has the most, you know, senior members within its employee framework, but that's not to hinder, that's not something to be critical of. It's actually use those skills in a way that we're able to then disseminate the skills within the sector as a whole. Now, that's by using tools to identify, you know, where are there certain things within an organisation that could be done in a more automated way. So bringing in automation in terms of, as we said, technology, but also in terms of there are other skills, other diverse backgrounds of people and different sectors also can be brought in. So for example, you know, we've got the army out there, we've got some of the hospitality that we all know that was impacted by COVID. They've been used to using technology. So, you know, bring some of those skills into the sector, because we do need to bring more people in. So we're not saying there's not enough jobs to bring people into the sector, but we could be a bit smarter and a bit more confident, you know, in that, well, there's people that can do HR that's come out of a different sector. There's people that's been able to do buying that's come from a different sector. All of these people have used technology. So let's use the skills that we have from within our organisations, but also have the confidence to bring other sector type skills into your organisation, which will then help strengthen that skills, as we say, shortage or lack of user adoption, as we might tend to see as, into the sector going forward. So I think we need to be able to adapt a bit more. I think 2020 has definitely shown that from a sector perspective, we've had to adapt, you know, the whole social distancing, getting information more efficiently, you know, with the material shortage, we have to do things using technology. And I think if every organisation actually look inwardly and do a gap analysis as to what they are using currently from manual to digital, I think the gap is not as massive as people actually think there is, because, you know, you get up and, you know, you go in front of the computer, you log on, you know, you're doing your expenses, you log on to a system, you book your holiday, you're logging onto a system. So it's the skills, there's a gap, but it's in terms of what areas of in construction are the biggest gaps and the needs that we need to address here and now. So I'll keep my bit short because I know there's going to be some Q&As, Carl.
Okay, thanks, Carol. That was really interesting there. And I think there'll be, there's quite a lot we can dig into in the questions there about looking inward and recognising skills and promoting skills from within, and looking outward as well. And then finally, last but not least, we have Nathan Marsh, who's the Chief Digital Officer at Turner and Townsend. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Carl, and thanks for having me. Look, I'm Nathan, the CDO here at Turner and Townsend. It's a new role at TNT, and it kind of reflects our commitment, I suppose, to kind of close that digital skills gap and make them more kind of life skills and wholesale skills across our business and across the industry. I guess, Carol's hit the nail on the head. It's one of the grand challenges of our time, really. It's particularly crucial and urgent for us all, especially after the last 18 months of fairly prolific, accelerated, and I suspect quite lasting change to the way that we work. And it's also crucial, because we've certainly seen over the last 18 months, the extent of some digital and economic exclusion. And those are areas that are really crucial for us to try and address as a sector. I think digital skills are vital for our industry's transformation, but they're also, frankly, vital for industry transformation overall, and frankly, wider societal transformation, and particularly will help levelling up. So I think, as some of the other speakers have said, we should look across all industries to work out how kind of digital skills as life skills can be ported across industry, and we can learn across industry. They're also going to help us unlock value, whether that's economic value, social value, or environmental value. So I really believe that digital skills are kind of core to making up not just our own industry transformation better and accelerated, but also some of that kind of social and geographic and economic levelling up, which I'm very passionate about. I do recognise that a lot of the transformation that we're trying to do, both in modern methods of construction, the way that we design and deliver infrastructure, is impacted by a lack of digital skills. But I also think we need to get better and more naturally digitally savvy as an industry, and think about robotics across the use of repetitive and volume processes, cost reduction, supporting sustainability. It's very hard to get decarbonisation without a robust grip of digitalisation. And I think, looking at it from a multi-lens perspective is important. It's also helpful to understand how used to the new ways of working we've all got. It would be to have a conference or a webinar like this, or a series of interviews like this online. So we need to get better at making digital skills a little more normalised. It's absolutely a way of life now, and it's part of our DNA. So again, I don't think it's just for our industry. We've got to, right from the kind of school, apprentice, grads, and into the some of the business training programs we have, build in the digital skills capability as a core life requirement. I think we need to build it in also to things like career pathways, from kind of grad through to exec, and it's got to have, it's a business skills issue, not just a sort of a technology skills issue. I think what causes the problem is that we focus sometimes on digital skills equal hardcore technology skills, and okay, you do need to be pretty smart to work some of the software and robotic systems we see in infrastructure design and delivery. But actually, whether you're on the exec, whether you're stakeholders, whether you're anywhere in the business, we all just need to get more digitally savvy. So I'm really keen that we can normalise and make more universal a level of digital skills acumen. I think we can, it'll also help us avoiding technology as a bolt-on to major programs and a bolt-on to projects. And I think there's something here about designing in right up front, so it's core to the DNA. I think we need to think pan-industry, like I've mentioned. Think about the blend of kind of human and machine. So what does the major program or business transformation or infrastructure of the future look like? What does therefore the team need to look like? And what do businesses need to look like to deliver it? Because the answer is quite a lot different to today. And that's something I think we can have a look at, aiming off, not just to fill the current digital skills gap, but also how we feel for the future. And lastly, I think we can turn it into a position of strength. I think we can build informal skills accreditation more formally in tenders. We have that digital skills passport. I think it's welcome to see one of those for our industry. We can learn from other sectors, as I've said, and also we can kind of use technology to help close the gap. So again, think about the use of software, robots, and automation in design, delivery on site, as well as the operational management of the assets. So in conclusion, I think our digital skills gap is a bit of a shared endeavour across society, but we've got to give it a focus on our industry. But I think we need to look pan-industry. We need to make it clear what the skills requirements are for right up front design and architecture of major programs and infrastructure delivery, the act of construction and assembly and production, and then also throughout the operating life. It's not where does digital sit, but kind of how it sits and how it improves performance. I want to take a fresh look at apprenticeships, because they're a great way of getting representation and inclusion across our talent base, bringing in fresh ideas, and also working with CITB, Construction Innovation Hub, and other industry bodies. Would welcome more of that. So I think it's definitely a kind of a business and government and sort of forum and lobbying body task. And lastly, I just think we need to think wide and think broad. So what does the answer look like? Well, I don't think the answer is going to come just from our sector. So again, I'd welcome on that note, hearing from across industry and across different voices to help us try and solve the shared endeavour of a skills shortage. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. That was really, really useful, particularly on the need for big thinking and learning from other sectors and working from a position of strength. Lots of positivity there, which I like. So we've actually got quite a lot of time for questions, which is great, isn't it? We've got a couple through from the audience, which I'll come to shortly. I'd like to kick off with a question or two, though. First, Carol, you mentioned the need to bring in new skills and sort of getting sort of more diverse skills and more diversity. And I just wondered what barriers are there currently to accessing that range of diversity and skills and that you mentioned. And how can we tackle those barriers?
I think it starts at the very beginning. I think from a construction industry or sector, it's not seen as the attractive sector to move into. So at the forefront of it is it's making it that attractive sector to all people. Youngsters will say, oh no, it's all muddy, it's cold, I don't want to do it, oh, I don't like the thought of turning up on site. So there's that element of making the sector, attractive and appealing to individuals, more talked about the sector within schools and colleges. Also, as a female, making it attractive more for women to get into the sector, because we all know the statistics that there's still not enough female representation in the sector. And, I sit on a number of discussion groups and, with men to see how we can help bring those skills and increase that level of more female QSs, commercial managers, etc. So it's about, again, sessions like this to bring more awareness, and also in terms of, make it more appealing in terms of when job positions are being advertised, that it's, there's an opportunity to look or speak to another member that's in the organisation that's come up maybe from an apprenticeship. Those apprenticeship schemes have been around as long as I know, and I think they were youth training schemes, showing my age now, but there were schemes there to bring youth into the sector. And if we can try and do and have more of those to help promote the sector more, I think we will see a lot more. And again, what's happening, as we've seen, the sector is paying more money. It's not that the money isn't there, for the roles that are there. The money is good, and the opportunity then is for businesses to show that you can start at this level and there's a career path that we will support you, and that has to be evidence. You've got to show it. You've got to actually show that you're doing it, and it's not just, I'm just going to tick a box to show that, yeah, we do it. Tick box exercise. It has to be evidenced as well. And I think what will also be good for the bigger organisation, showcase your business. Do lovely videos to show a day in the life of a QS on site, or a commercial manager, or the estimating department. Show evidence. We get adverts for Coca-Cola. Why do we have adverts for construction, right? Showing how wonderful it is. So it's actually showing construction at its best. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, very much so. Who else wants to come in on this? Maybe Marcus, do you agree that that we could be doing a lot more in construction to widen the diversity of skills?
Well, I'd agree with absolutely everything I've just heard from Carol. I mean, I think there's a wealth of fantastic things that go on within construction, and the attitudes and behaviours of a minority shape the perceptions that lead lots to have a sort of a misinformed idea of what construction can be. But those challenges about underrepresentation of most groups, basically anyone that isn't a white middle-aged man like me, are statistically true. I think there's an opportunity for construction. So it's estimated that, let me just check, I think by 2030, the population of young adults is going to increase by about 25%, but it's a sort of a short anomaly. It's going to go away. So we've got this great chance to attract a whole load of young people into the industry by presenting an industry that looks like them. You know, so that it looks like a young black woman. It looks like a place where a woman can work. And I think there was a point Carol made that people don't want to work in construction because it's dirty and there's heavy lifting. You want to try being a nurse, and yet nursing has got an equally bad reputation in terms of diversity. Women tend to go into that, and there's no reason at all why women can't do any of the jobs at all in construction. What we need to do is create the flexibility and the working environment that makes that possible. And other industries have offered flexible working. Other industries offer toilet facilities that are suitable for women. Construction needs to do that on site, not just in the office. So I think that's part of it. But I think not only is it about presenting an industry that is culturally and attitudinally modern, it's one that is technically modern. And I mean, if you look around at what construction does, it is just phenomenal. Look at any of the buildings going up in cities. But I think there's a range of things. We need to tell them about the climate challenge and explain how big an issue it is for construction. We're responsible for 40% of UK carbon emissions. We need to fix that. We need to find new ways to do traditional things. And the video that Andrew showed us of 1919 construction and present construction, I've got something similar. I've got a picture of the roof of the Pantheon in Rome. It's a 2,000-year-old concrete dome. The Romans could build something like that, and we can just about do the same thing. I think that there are lots of opportunities for us to bring people in, and if we create an environment in which they see it as being relevant to them, what we also benefit from is a whole load of different ideas and ways of doing things that are only going to accelerate the process of modernisation. Okay, sorry, I basically just repeated Carol.
No, it's very good, very insightful. I was wondering whether there were any kind of specific skills or specific areas that construction is kind of missing out on because of what we think maybe these perceptions of the industry or a lack of diversity and the rest of it. I don't know whether Andrew, you have any thoughts on that? Are there specific skills that we need to get better at, kind of attracting them?
Yeah, I think actually we need to try and almost come away from having those specific skills. You know, we talk about going into schools and saying, you know, I love going to talk to schools and engaging with them. But if I was trying to sell being a bricklayer, that would be a very, very hard sell. So actually what we try and do is look away, actually step away from being some of those traditional skills, some of those more labor intensive, very low productivity skills, and try and create new roles. If we look at things like offsite construction, if we look at digital design and how those can come together, actually you can create a whole new set of skills and careers that don't necessarily have to be based on site. For many people, actually the thought of working on site is part of the problem, and be it toilets, be it working conditions, be it working from home, away from home, all of those things. Actually, those are all challenges people see on the site. So if you can take that to a centralized hub, create a more manufacturing focused approach that's aligned to digital technologies, and use the digital technologies to expedite that manufacture. Actually create new roles that don't exist today that are probably more appealing to a wider range of people, more accessible to a wider range of people. You know, if you speak to some of the women I speak to, they don't particularly want to go and work on a site because they don't fancy being a steel fixer. They don't fancy that environment, but actually working in a manufacturing environment might be more accessible to them. People that have got disabilities trying to get around a construction site where it could be muddy, it could have rocks all over the place, or limited access. Actually, again, sort of trying to take that work environment, create different work environment, creates a much more accessible environment for people to come into our industry, albeit on a completely new and different point.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Nathan, do you have anything to add on all of this?
Look, I think Andrew's absolutely right. If we look at what a major infrastructure program takes now in kind of the early 20s, as it were, I mean, they're hyper scale, they're hyper complexity, the amount of interfaces across different components, different suppliers, different schedules, different contracts. You know, this is an unprecedented level of scale, complexity, visibility, and therefore the sorts of skills needed, you know, systems thinking, systems engineering, software development, analytics, you know, haven't used the construction word once there. So I really do think we need to get digital skills to be completely normalized, because that's what it's going to take to deliver complex infrastructure and operate it. And also put that into the kind of the, I don't know, employee value proposition for our sector. This is what it takes to deliver infrastructure in 2025. These are the sorts of people, the sorts of curiosity, the sorts of mindset we need. And by the way, it's very different to what you probably imagine, and it's ultra exciting. It also carries with it a huge amount of responsibility, given the scale and impact, the conduct of infrastructure delivery, let alone the legacy when it's in use. So I'd like to see a more kind of normalized approach and a refreshed approach to how we present the skills needed. I'd love a sort of, you know, we need people like you kind of campaign, and that you is ultra diverse and representative. And I also think we shouldn't shy away from the duty that we have to society and the environment for getting this right, because this is big stuff we're playing with. I'd love the importance of that to be shared as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I chip in and be a bit disagreeable? So I don't disagree with any of that, but I think there is a need for a bit of context. And so what we need are modern methods, so the likes of Top Hat, to get people manufacturing construction rather than doing it on site. But at the moment, that's a small proportion of the whole. So if we can massively increase the kind of thing Andrew does, it helps to fill part of the gap. And infrastructure, the kind of things that Nathan is talking about, there are fantastic examples out there at the moment, what Wilmot Dixon, Laing O'Rourke, others are doing. So you know, it is already happening. But as an employer, infrastructure represents a very small part of construction. The vast majority of construction is repair and maintenance. 40% of all employment in the construction industry is self-employment, and 95% of all construction firms are micros. They employ fewer than 10 people. So yeah, absolutely agree with everything, but it's a fraction of the whole. What we need to do is do what Carol was talking about and make all of construction appealing. And we need to work out how we fix those little niggly problems that mean quality is too often pretty crap and productivity is poor. Now, I don't have the answer to it, but the potential benefits of those for the economy, for construction firms, are huge. It's an industry that is worth hundreds of billions of pounds a year. If you can, through getting new ideas in and digitalizing processes and using more effective tools to do jobs and taking away horrible jobs, improve the productivity by 5 or 10%, you are creating a value that is for those firms of tens, if not more, hundreds of billions of pounds. So the case for this is that you're making all those SMEs more productive, more profitable, doing better jobs, turning things around more quickly. And that's what I think is part of the inspiring message, or needs to be part of the inspiring message. And it's, you know, I don't want to be a killjoy, but we kind of need to recognize the realities of life, that the net zero challenge is we've got to fix 29 million buildings. And that's about dry lining and roofing and insulation and floors and walls. And so what we need to do is modernize traditional skills and understand the circumstances of people. Someone mentioned diversity in relation to disability. And again, we think we've got an appalling record, but for many people, construction is a really attractive career, because what they have are technical skills requiring dexterity, but actually they might have an invisible challenge like dyslexia or something else. So what we also need to do is kind of use technology to enable people that engage with the world in a different way to engage more fully. And I think that's another area where digitalisation offers kind of hope and possibility.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marcus. I'm going to move on to one of the audience questions on a slightly different tack. So I think this question is referring to the Building Safety Bill and some of the digitisation requirements in the Building Safety Bill. Simon Ince asks, the new gateways are going to force the industry to digitise information, however, only for those buildings in scope. What will force construction to go digital for buildings that are not in scope? Regulation 38 information is such a good example of poor digital practice. So who fancies tackling that one? Don't all rush at once. Nathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Look, I touched on the idea of the skills passport. I'd like to see that more formally shaped. You know, some tenders kind of requested. I think as an industry, we need to be even more deliberate and explicit about what digital skills need to look like. And I think it was Carol that mentioned, get really detailed in the sorts of skills we need. That's going to help attract the right talent in, but it's also going to help sort of raise the bar in terms of quality. I also wonder whether we should consider, you know, a BSI or ISO suite of standards for digital skills. So we've got sort of a fixed bar. That could be quite interesting to raise the bar, if you like, and make it a more formally acknowledged and accessible level of skills for construction. Other industries do that. So I think probably strengthening our position on what the definition and the standards are is going to help us all. And certainly no one's going to do it for us. So I think it's up to us as an industry to take that one forward.
Okay, would anybody have anything to add to that?
I'll just add quickly, Carl, in terms of that. I mean, the only thing I'd add is if you start embracing digital technology properly, I'm fully embracing it, you can embed quality assurance into that process, and it should be an integral part of that process. And if you are managing quality, and quality isn't down to Dave on the site on that particular day, putting in a bit of paper and ensuring something's done, it's a much more thorough process. It's digitized. It's using technology to test and check. There's a significantly higher prospect of quality being embedded into what we do. And that's not just in terms of fire, that's quality in terms of sustainability, all the other aspects that fall out of that. So technology has a real opportunity to push quality into what we do and check that it's being done as well.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks, Andrew. Let's move on. Nobody has mentioned the B word yet, so I'm going to go there. So what impact will Brexit have on this skills challenge in terms of digital transformation, and how do we mitigate that? So who wants to kick off a chat about Brexit?
I'm not sure I can answer the question, but I think we do know that there is evidence that what happened as a result of Brexit is that we have lost access to quite a lot of people with site technical skills. And so that's part of the problem that I mentioned earlier, that I think partly as a result of Brexit, partly as a result of COVID, the industry has lost access to lots of people, and they tend to be the site-based people that are crucial. You know, I've got a thing I say, which is the bricklayers need to be where the bricks are. So looking forward, I think the challenge is more how we come to terms with the situation and respond to, rather than that it's going to materially change things further. I think the change has happened, but the opportunities probably are, well, all of the things that we've been talking about, that we need to attract new people into the industry. We need to do things in a different way. We need, more top hat type houses. Sorry, I'm advertising Andrew. I shouldn't be doing that. But that it helps resolve the problem. And I think often skills are available to us that don't need to be on site. So one of the things that has happened that is less a Brexit thing and more a COVID thing is we've all figured out that some of our work can be done like this. So people don't necessarily always need to be in a particular place. So I think a change in mindset has already happened. It may well be something similar is happening as a result of Brexit.
Okay.
Really answer the question.
Yeah, it kind of. Who else wants to come in on that? Carol, do you?
Yeah, I do. I think that B word. I think the outcome of Brexit, and I know there's things that have come up with the lorry drivers and things that have visibly impacted, but I think, and I like to always look at things in a positive way. Yes, there's short-term pain, but I think from a sector perspective, and this session's about digital transformation, I think it's given us the opportunity to actually think, well, did we need X amount of people doing certain things on site? It's like Nathan said, look at some of the actual tasks and look at how you can be more efficient in terms of how does that information get to site in the first place. We've all walk around with mobile applications. It's now looking that we, from a country perspective, there's people that, or youngsters that may be thinking, well, should I go to university and spend and have a 30 grand debt at the end of it? Or should I look at a way of, coming into a sector that wants me, needs me, and will give me a great opportunity to excel? So for me, yeah, Brexit has happened. We will, we're still finding out each day some of the impact. Yes, we've lost a large workforce that was readily available, but now we're having to address that and address it in a smarter way using tech, but also then you're finding out who's your best, your number one subcontractors, or your tier ones, your tier twos, that will actually become your proper portfolio CV for delivering projects. So I think from a positive perspective, we are going to use this opportunity, as a result of Brexit, to be much smarter in the construction sector, use tech in a better way, and streamline and be more efficient, and ultimately, increase those profit margins.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come in on that topic?
I need to really agree. We are where we are. We've got to remain optimistic and positive, and I think it's forcing our hand on some innovation, really, and also really challenging how we adapt to the situation. So as kind of Carol said, I'm naturally more positive, I think, about it, because we are where we are. We're now just got to make the best of it, and it's already forcing us to think differently about talent acquisition, talent types, talent sourcing, and looking across at other sectors. So I hope and think that's a good thing.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the audience. I think I understand the first part of this question, but slightly puzzled by the second half of the question. Maybe you guys can help me out. So, question is it a skill shortage or actually a desire shortage in relation to implementing a digital source of truth? That's the problem. Now, I'm not sure about the second part of that question, but is this coming back to the skills are there, but the desire is not there? Is that what they're asking? Does anybody have anything to say on that, Andrew?
Yeah. So Carl, I mean, one of the things that I find is there's a lot of reluctance. So there is an element of a desire shortage, and it's quite important to try and understand why. And all the, I can't remember if it was Marcus, but all the white middle-aged men that are making the decisions in industry at the moment have 30 years of track record and muscle memory of doing things one way. And all of that knowledge, all of that expertise, and they may not be particularly digitally competent, they might not have a particularly great understanding of it, and yet they're the ones that are deciding on the pathway that businesses are going to be taking. And we're surprised occasionally that they don't necessarily take the slightly out there approach and the more aspirational approach that's digitally led. We know there are trailblazers in the industry that are pushing hard and leading the way, but they're quite often seen as the mavericks, or they're quite often seen as slightly left field. So yeah, I think that the issue really is a lack of desire. If you start going and looking for those skills and you start talking about those skills, what you will find, and certainly from my own experiences, if you start to engage with young people and talk about tech and talk about sustainability and talk about all of those things, you've suddenly got a queue of people at the door for you. If you just start talking about things more traditionally, you'd be amazing how quickly they're repelled. So actually, there is not a lack of desire from the younger people. I think the problem sits much higher up in these organisations.
Okay, does anybody else want to come in on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the desire could be deemed as confidence, as in you know, don't want to lose the opportunity of my job. You know, there's a fear there of, you know, if we go this way, I'm going to get left behind, because that's not my world of what I've been used to. I've been used to doing it a specific way. But actually, I think that, you know, the construction sector, and if I use the term that you used, you know, the grey hair men, they are full of talent. That's the talent. You know, I love sitting in rooms and hearing the experience of where it was there to where it is now. I think people, you know, that desire, it needs to be, you know, from the top, needs to be right. Let's make sure this business exists for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I want to be part of that. I want to impart my knowledge. So, you know, the board members, commercial directors, finance directors, some top guys in the sector need not to fear. They need to be part of embracing and getting, you know, fueling the desire to make construction have a longevity, you know, and bringing in that bank of talent that we know it needs and can bring in, and they can help. They can help because there are things that, you know, the knowledge of how they did it manually and studied by flicking pages, you know, in a textbook for hours, for years, that you can't take that away. That's embedded, but it can be shared. It can be shared in a way that, you know, can be digitalized and changed in a way that can help the sector going forward. So that's what I would add to that desire. It needs to be from the top, as Andrew said.
Okay, thank you. So the desire is there. It just needs to be kind of nurtured, I suppose, and channeled from the top. That's brilliant, Carol. We've probably got time for one last point, one last question rather, very quickly. It's linked in a way. Carol Smith. It's quite a good question actually. She talks about how she went to an exhibition in Milton Keynes in 1981, where they were talking about sustainability and they were showcasing air source heat pumps. She says nothing seems to have changed since then. Do you think the industry struggles to change and to change quickly? We've got just a couple of minutes for anyone who wants to talk about that. Does the industry struggle to change?
Yes. And on the subject of air source heat pumps, brilliant, but you've got to insulate your house first. And nothing exists in isolation. The construction industry is complex. There are no easy answers, but you need to put your air source heat pump into the context of the whole of the rest of the building. And so insulate the building first. I mean, I hope Andrew's top hat houses have got heat pumps. Is that right, Andrew?
The only option is a heat pump.
Good, brilliant. That's what. But my house, you know, with my 270-year-old flint wall, back to front fridge heating me, I'm gonna die. or I'll have to put on a lot of jumpers.
Okay, all right, thanks guys. I think
Carol wasn't happy with my answer.
sorry.
Carol Smith wasn't happy with my answer.
Probably not, no.
It's yes and no, isn't it? You know, there are pockets of unbelievable innovation and progressive thinking and modern methods and modern approaches. You know, we're such a well-capitalized industry. That's an indication the amount of the weight of capital queuing to get into us. So we're obviously doing some things right. Then you can go on site, whether it's, you know, residential or heavy infrastructure, and there are some archaic practices. We just got to get more of the former to drive out and bring up effectively that sort of lag we've got. But it's certainly not a binary answer. It's going to be, you know, we just need more of those pockets of brilliance and excellence to be more commonplace.
Brilliant.
And if I can chip in and respond to that and waste people's time, I think one of the key skills is people understanding their role in the context of everything else that's going around it. And we should stop thinking that it's a bricklayer or an architect or a plant operative, because actually the heat pumps point is you need to understand how the whole of the structure operates, and people need to understand the interrelationships. And that's something we need to get better at teaching people, because the future is about getting the right balance between retaining the technical expertise that people have and then embellishing it with the kind of skills that Carol, Nathan, and Andrew have been talking about.
Okay, I think that's about all we've got time for, guys. But thank you very much. It's gone really quickly, actually. It's been really fascinating discussion. Look out for much more on Digital Building Week on Building's website throughout this week. This session will be available on demand also, so if you want to watch it again, feel free to. But the only thing for me to do is to thank our panelists. So thank you to Andrew, Nathan, Carol and Marcus. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you.